Yes, we are live now.
Well, good.
We do have few participants.
Good. Welcome to everybody who joined us today in the afternoon. We thought that it would be a good idea to take some time in the afternoon just to refresh, because although you may get a good start in the morning and you may have a good ending to the day, it's nice to have a point in the afternoon where we can get grounded and remember some basic principles. So the theme of spiritual fitness is important because there's a way in which it's easier to stay in shape than it is to get in shape. And the success we have in our life really depends on being balanced in body, mind, and spirit. And today we're going to talk about a few basic principles in these categories that are recommended by the wisdom literatures. And there are some very small changes that one could make or practices that one can take up that really bring one to a higher mode of nature. So thank you for joining us, and I'll go over a few of these in just a minute. First, I want to thank you all again for joining us here today. And if you have questions or you want to make comments or make reflections, then you can type them into the text box in Zoom if you're on the Zoom, and if you're on Facebook, you can just put them right into the Facebook comments. And we have somebody right there noticing them. They'll bring them to my attention. So first, starting with the admonition given in the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the most widely respected wisdom literatures in the world. And therein, the discussion of yoga in its various aspects is taken up by Krishna to his disciple Arjuna. It's in an unlikely place for a conversation, which is in the middle of the battlefield right before the battle starts. But that actually proves that in our normal lives, which sometimes seem like a battlefield, we can be successful in yoga, because when you're in the eye of the storm, there's peace. And similarly, when we're centered from within our own hearts and minds, we feel balance. No matter what's going on around us, we'll be able to persevere, but not just persevere, to have a higher perspective and therefore to be more effective. And interestingly, in the Gita, as it's affectionately called, the Bhagavad Gita is shortened often as the Gita, which I'll refer to as the Gita. And Krishna says, Yukta hara vihadasya, yukta chestasya karmasu, yukta swapna vibodhasya, yogo bhavati dukkha. This Sanskrit verse says, yogo bhavati dukkha. So dukkha, as many of you know who have been attending some of the recent seminars, dukkha means that unhappiness that one might feel. And dukkha, ha means to diminish or to kill. So dukkha means to kill distress, to take it away. So yoga bhavati dukkha. He's saying by this practice of yoga, one can diminish or completely eliminate distress in one's life. Oftentimes this word dukkha refers to being out of alignment. And we also talked recently about the word ka, which means space, and du, which means bad. And when we become contracted in our consciousness, we don't have a lot of space in which to think or move internally, and therefore we feel the stress of life. And we also are more effective by the impulses that come into our nervous system. So what is he saying in this verse? Yukta hara vihadasya. So first he says eating. So obviously refers to the body. Yukta hara vihadasya. So yukta means to be balanced in your eating. It seems rather commonsensical, and of course people will say this all the time. It's important we eat, as you are what you eat. So that's something to remember. There was a recent article about somebody who had a very poor diet over a period of time and suffered severe consequences of going blind due to the diet. This is an extreme case, but fact is, to varying degrees, we may feel a bodily misery, distress, or even mental distress because of the diet we have. So there definitely is a preference in the yoga literatures that one should eat food that is non-violent, doesn't require excessive killing, especially those entities that have a face, as one might say, and also that is fresh, clean, and so forth. I mean, it's just modern science talks about eating more fruits and vegetables and things like that, and not eating too much. And that's what this verse says. Yuktahara viharasya. Be balanced in your eating. Don't eat too much and don't eat too little. Some people also starve themselves in the name of spiritual development, but that's also not recommended. The body's a machine. It's supposed to be taken care of properly. Again, this is very commonsensical, but it's important to be reminded because, as it is said in the yoga literature, the tongue is the most voracious of all the senses. And if it's not regulated in eating and does eat anything it wants or as much as it wants, then there are consequences to our minds, to our bodies, and so forth. So one of the rules that I had written down for eating is there are numbers that matter, actually. And one of them is to eat half your plate. You don't have to eat the whole thing. Either that or get a smaller plate. Another one is to get at least 25 to 35 grams of fiber every day. That means eat lots of fruits and vegetables. Nobody's going to argue with it. Well, most people won't argue with these ideas. They're fairly widespread. And that'll make a difference. So yuktahara viharasya, be careful what you eat because it will have a direct effect. And yukta chestasya karmasu, yukta swapna vibodhasya. So then herein in this yoga section, it's mentioned that don't sleep too much, but also don't sleep too little. It's become part of modern culture to sleep less and less and wear it as a badge of courage that I only slept a few hours and so forth. But modern research shows, there was a study at UC Berkeley recently, and a book that came out of it that talked about the perils of sleeping too little. The brain needs it to think. So this is, again, ancient wisdom that says, don't sleep too much, don't sleep too little. Find out what you need and take that. And according to the need, also get to bed earlier because of artificial light. It's really easy to stay up late, staring into a screen or just doing idle work because we're still stimulated by the light. But the Ayurveda, which refers to the duration of our life and how to preserve it as much as possible so that you can use the body for higher purposes, says you should be sound asleep by 10 p.m. And that means that you have a chance to get up early, which is really, really important in the practice of yoga because the golden hours are before sunrise for spiritual practice. And if you get up early enough and you start your day on the right note in a conscious way, then it's like you have 2 days, actually. There's the day before the sun rises and the day after the sun rises, and they're very different. And it gives you a foundation upon which to build the rest of your day. Again, very commonsensical, but to be reminded of this is important because tendency is I'll just sleep like a bear and just keep sleeping. Or I'll go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and it doesn't matter. It does matter. The Ayurveda says, and I'm not an expert on the Ayurveda, but I have excerpted certain sections of it, which talk about these very basic activities that we perform every day. And one of them speaks in terms of the body's cycles that it goes through, and it's connected to the earth. And during the nighttime when we're sleeping, the body also goes through cycles and it purifies various organs. And if you miss those cycles, then you'll feel out of balance physically. So get enough sleep, especially the earlier in the evening that you can sleep and the earlier you can get up, at least before sunrise by about an hour and 40 minutes is ideal. To be there and present is very, very helpful. And finally, yukta chestasya karmasu. Here Krishna says that you should make sure to recreate enough but not too much. And by recreation, you can think of the word recreation. We need time to process all the information that we're getting every day, because we're drinking from a fire hose, as they say, and there's so much information coming and so much planning we have going on in our heads oftentimes, that to stop and look at it and prioritize it, to recreate ourselves and ask the question, why am I doing this in the first place? And what's the most important? This is so productive. Just prioritizing the day and saying, which things should I do first and second? Because we won't ever have enough time to do everything we want. But we'll always have enough time to do the things that we need to do and that are the most important. And if we don't distinguish between the two, that is all the things that I'd like to or need to do and the things that I absolutely want to do and I have to do, then we'll constantly be in anxiety, because we'll be chasing after many things at the same time. There's an old saying, if you chase two rabbits, you won't catch either of them. So take time to recreate yourself. I recommend a technique I learned many, many years ago from a mentor of mine, is to get a legal pad and a pen and sit down in a quiet place and write down what you're doing, why you're doing it, and make a priority list. And the more frequently you do that, take time to recreate yourself and your priorities, the more energized you'll feel. And this is towards the higher modes of nature, because you're taking time to determine what's important in your life. This is trending towards sattva, or the higher mode of nature, purposeful living. So body, there's a lot to say about body, but those are a few basic ideas. And I'll just mention, for good measure, exercise. It's very important to take some time to stretch the body every day, and also to get the heart moving, because people sit too much nowadays, and sitting is the new smoking. So if you work that into your schedule, enough exercise so that the body stays fluid and it doesn't get blocked up, then your mind will be clear, and it's much better for your physical and mental health. So that's number one, the body, just a cursory look and reminder on that level of keeping the body fit. So the next one I'm going to talk about, especially if there are no comments coming in yet, and I'll check in with JM to see if he's got any.
Yeah, so we have some reflection, but there's no question. But we do have 10 people who are joined.
Let's hear the reflection. That'd really be nice to hear from somebody out there, since I'm just seeing names, basically.
Yeah. So one is from Kamala, who's saying, eat food which is non-violent, fresh, clean, and veggies. Don't eat too much or too little. These are some of the thoughts she really liked.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kamala.
Yeah. And we do have 10 panel people who joined the Zoom call. We have Rakesh, Josh, Ganesh, Angelina, Vlad.
Okay. And they're welcome to come off mute and speak up at any time if they'd like to, because that'd be fun for sure. If you want to have some fun, just take yourself off mute and say whatever you wish. And you can do that at any time. Feel free to interrupt me, because I'll just keep rolling here. So the next aspect of our overall existence, holistically speaking, is the mind. And the mind is the center of all planning and activities and desires and so forth. And there's a concept Erich Fromm brought up years ago about freedom to or freedom from. Idea is that we're freedom-loving entities. As living beings, we're creative. We want to move the way we want to move. And it's an interesting concept that, do we want to be free to do anything, or do we want to have freedom from, and as some describe it, the tyranny of the senses? Because there's an interesting relationship we have with the senses. If we indulge them wantonly, that is, that we let them do whatever they wish, then according to the Yoga Sutras, we start in our minds to develop what's called a samskar, or it's an impression. And that impression haunts us basically and invites us to come back and do the same activity again and again. And soon we are not able to break away from it, and it develops into a habit. Now, of course, if it's a good habit, that's a good thing. But oftentimes, left to their own devices, senses, our minds don't develop good habits, but by default, they tend to develop habits that may be detrimental to our mental, spiritual health. So taking time to regulate the senses is something that Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita is important. And it's counterintuitive, and he mentions this principle in the Gita by saying that there are regulative principles of freedom. That means that raga dvesha vimuktaistu vishan indriyaishcharan atmavashar vidhyatma prasadam adhigashati. So he's saying here that in the beginning, when you learn to regulate your senses and to control the mind, then yes, you're controlling, but ultimately that gives you more freedom, because left on their own, the senses begin to control me. However, if I regulate the senses through the practice of yoga, yogic thinking, which means focus, meditation, and also learning to develop more perspective and tolerance. This is another aspect that is mentioned in the Gita throughout, and that is that if we practice tolerance, the mind starts to become stronger and steadier. And then we have freedom from the impulses of the senses, and paradoxically, that gives us more freedom ultimately. So this is a difference between, there's a difference, I should say, between instincts and impulses. A lot of our instincts are there just to help us. And naturally, they're there to help us protect our bodies and our psychological bodies as well. And then there are impulses. So instincts may be healthy and helpful, but we also have to be aware that there are impulses. And the impulses we have to choose and sort out which ones we'll indulge and which ones we will procrastinate on. This is a good kind of procrastination. So, yes.
We do have a couple of questions from
Facebook. Okay, let's do that.
Yeah. So we have a question from Hariharan, who is asking how to restrict eating when the food is very good. So sometimes you get carried away. And a related question is from Kamala, who's asking, is there a certain time on which we should eat, or should we stop eating after a certain time?
Well, as to Hariharan's question, it helps if you use a smaller plate. I've noticed this recently when I travel. Sometimes my host will give me a plate as big as a wagon wheel. And then it's really hard to tell how much you're eating. If you ask for a smaller plate, it helps, as then your portions are smaller. But as you know, from the business world, anything that gets measured gets done or it gets improved. So if you're a little careful and you measure actually how much you're eating, and not to become overly pedantic about this, but the fact is, if you develop a little bit of awareness of portions and how much you're eating and how much you actually need, and that can be calculated. I mean, there's lots of companies out there that spend their time making charts that you can look at to say, here's how much you need. But the basic yogic formula is that you shouldn't fill up your belly all the way. You don't need to. You need to leave some air inside. And it's amazing too that if you walk away before you're full, then you actually feel better in the long run. You don't have to sleep as much. Your body doesn't have to do as much work, and you actually feel better. And it's a practice to gradually eat a little bit less than you did before. And if you do that, it's like walking away on top. Sometimes politicians or athletes, they wait too long until they get so old they can't even move, or somebody kicks them out or impeaches them or something like that. But if you walk away on top, so same thing when you're eating, walk away while you're ahead. You're not quite full yet, but resist that impulse to just top it off and walk away. That's one of the pieces of advice that my spiritual master used to give. Don't try to stoke your belly all the way full. And as far as times to eat, best time to eat is when you're hungry, according to the Ayurveda. And of course, you can develop artificial hunger by expanding the size of your belly unlimitedly, which means you can go on eating and eating. But if you're living a regulated lifestyle and exercising and so forth, then of course it's good to eat at regular times, but especially when you're hungry. And there's a lot of evidence nowadays that it's very healthy to fast intermittently. So better to skip a meal than to add extra ones. According to the modern research, there's ways in which when you skip a meal, sometimes it gives the body a chance to reset. Fortunately, in the yogic culture, there's a particular day that comes on the 11th day of the waning and waxing moon, 2 times a month, when people are invited to fast, at least to eat light on those days. And some people fast altogether. And it's extremely healthy. I do it twice a month. I just don't eat for 36 hours. And I can't believe how much extra time I get in my day. And not only that, I feel more energized. And the next day I feel like I'm a kid again. Really, it's amazing how when you don't put too much fuel in your body, you actually feel better. And it seems your mind will scream and your belly will scream and say, hey, wait a minute. I thought we were going to eat as much as we like all day long. But when you say, no, not today, and you just neglect them, after a while, you also develop a sense of sort of internal fortitude that, hey, I'm in charge around here. You guys don't tell me what to do. That's the tyranny of the senses. They're constantly telling me, you have to do this or you'll die. Of course, that's their job, really. They're trying to protect us on a physical level, a mental level, saying that you have to survive. But we have to use our higher intelligence to see how to survive in a much better way. That's what yoga means, to be aware of the purpose of your body and your mind and to develop spiritual fitness. Is there another question?
Yes, we do have one more.
Okay.
How to not become overwhelmed due to spiritual failures and continue with progress?
How to not become overwhelmed due to?
Spiritual failures?
Spiritual failures.
Yes.
Well, here's a news flash. There are no spiritual failures. This is also Gita wisdom. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that anybody who tries on any level for spiritual advancement will never be disappointed, nor will they ever lose the progress they try for. This is a question Arjuna asks also, because Krishna is recommending that he live a more spiritual life, but Arjuna says, what about the rest of my life? Won't I lose both things if I try for this? And Krishna says, no, you won't lose at all. On the spiritual side, if you try for it, then even if you fail, then that the progress is preserved. And you take it up later, either in this life or in the next life. And Krishna talks about that in the Gita, how you're automatically attracted to the yogic principles that you practiced in your past life. And in the present life, you take it up from where you started. Because according to the Gita, we have 2 bodies, 2 physical bodies. One is the more present or recent, I should say, of our bodies, and that's the gross physical body. We just got this a few minutes ago. I mean, it was just cooked up, and we got this physical body. It's not going to last long, so don't worry too much. It's already diminishing the day that you're born, practically. And the other is a more ancient body, and that's the subtle body that we carry with us wherever we go from one physical body to the next. This is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. Shariram Yaravapnoti Yat Yukramatishvara Grihit Vaitani Samyati Vayur Gandham Ivashayat. That we carry this ancient mind, this our psychological body, from one gross body to the next. And so when we're moving from one body to the next, Jam, remind me the particular question because I got far afield.
Yeah, so Tulsi Ananda's question was how to not get overwhelmed due to spiritual failures.
Oh, failures, spiritual failures. Yeah, and I just immediately reacted to the concept of spiritual failure. So, one of the biggest advertising firms in the world, I think they came up with the Nike swoosh. That's pretty good. They have a big poster in their lobby that says "Fail harder," and of course, fail forward fast. And my spiritual master used to say that failure is the pillar to success. If you're trying, you're not failing. And the fact is that to advance in any discipline, you have to undergo some so-called failure. It tests your parameters, and it gives you legs, actually. When you're learning to walk, you fall down many times, but you get back up again. That's what helps to develop balance and strength. So in spiritual practice, there's no failure. You just keep going. Consistency is very important. So when I say keep going, I mean, and on the spiritual side, one should develop what's called sadhana. Sadhana means a specific practice to reach sadhya, which is the goal. And the two should match. If you want to go somewhere, you should know how to get there. So in spiritual practice, there's a way to develop reforms in one's life and practices, daily practices that take us to the actual goal. And as we're doing those, we may have instances where we're able to do them better than at other times. But the main point is that we should go on doing them every day. So one of the principles, for instance, in doing mantra meditation, which was one of the most important aspects of bhakti-yoga, is to repeat your mantra every day and listen to the sound, because introduction of a spiritual sound into your life, into your ears, into your heart, is one of the reformatory processes that brings you to spiritual fitness. And if you adhere to what's called numerical strength, that means you take up a personal vow to chant the mantra a certain number of times every day. Then you'll find, of course, that the mind will fluctuate, and some days it will want to do it, and other days it won't want to do it. But if you consistently do it anyway, then you'll start to make progress. And now what if you fail? I didn't make my goal. I fell away from my vow and so forth. At least you know where the marker is, and now you can come back to it and try again. So balance doesn't mean always being stable. It means knowing how to come back to the center. So develop a center by having a clear idea of what your daily practice is, and you'll make advancement. So we talked a little bit about body.
Yep. We do have one more question from Vlad, who's on the Zoom.
Yes.
The question is, what are the principles and what is happening to an individual and others that she's praying for? Basically, how praying for yourself is different from praying for others.
Was that a two-part question? Can you tell me?
I think it's just a clarification then. So how praying for yourself is different from praying for others.
How praying for yourself is different from praying for others?
Yeah.
Well, sometimes, I mean, any kind of prayer makes one aware of the fact that we are not self-sufficient. In other words, well, we may be self-sufficient, but we're not exactly self-directing, or we're not completely independent. And this is one of the tenets of the teachings of yoga, which in the Bhagavad Gita is mentioned as the path of knowledge. It begins with amanitvam and adamvitvam. These two principles mean humility and pridelessness, which means to admit that I'm not self-sufficient. I can't do it without help. And it means that I have to accept some descending power, some descending grace. So prayer in any of its forms helps us to connect to that idea that the basic prayer is, I need help. And if we pray for others, then there's an element of generosity or compassion that comes in too, which is also edifying for someone on the spiritual paths. So it is a nice practice to pray for others, becoming aware that, asking out of goodwill so that others may be helped. It makes us aware of our connection to a higher power, and also for ourselves as well. So either way, prayer is one of the 9 processes that are mentioned in Bhakti that connect us directly to what is called in the Yoga Sutra, Ishvara. In fact, throughout the Yoga Sutra, you'll find many different processes to understand and become understand the self, the higher self and the lower self, then become fixed in the higher self that are rather mechanical. They require a lot of yogic meditation and focus. But then when you come to the halfway point of the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali, thousands of years ago, said, Ishvara Pranidan. If you become humble and aware of the fact that you're not the all in all, you're not the supreme power, there's a higher power above you, and you open the channel to that higher power through prayer, then very quickly you'll come into the yogic state. So thanks for bringing up that point. It's important.
Yes. So yeah, we are slightly 1 minute beyond our scheduled time.
Well, there's busy people on this call, so I would like to honor their time. You were going to say, Jan?
Yeah, I'm just going to say, in case there are any other last questions or reflections, we can take them, or if you have to wrap up with some final thoughts, we can take them.
Yeah, and if you watch this later, if you happen to be watching this as a recorded message, we have a section on the website, which is vaisesikadasa.com, where you can ask questions. It's called Ask Vaish. So feel free to write in your questions. They'll be logged, sent in. I'll take my time. That is, I'll take some consideration to answer your question according to the verdict of the yoga scriptures that were written thousands of years ago. And so you can ask later. Thank you very much for taking your valuable time to join us for our ongoing series on spiritual fitness. And I look forward to seeing any of you in the corporate world tomorrow, downtown San Francisco. We'll be doing a program, and actually 2 programs next week. Did somebody just text? From Josh, panelist. Oh, thanks, Josh. Now I can see where these are coming in. This was a wonderful session. Thank you. Thanks, Josh. Thank you very much. That means a lot to me. Great to have you on board. I'll see you all soon. We'll keep this ongoing so we can keep the vibration going, because our vision is to, Silicon Valley is such an important place, San Francisco, Northern California, and we really want to bring the vibration up. The best and brightest live and work here in this area. And the more that we can bring the vibration to a higher level, the more we can get done that's practical for ourselves and for the world. So thank you very, very much for joining, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Some of you in San Francisco tomorrow, some of you in Mountain View on Wednesday, and we'll be announcing when we're going to have further broadcasts. And thanks, JM, for facilitating us today.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. It was good.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.